to IFAS Extension. Today we're going to learn more about alternatives for growing different crops, because you may have thought about, well, you know, I've got this area in my yard that I want to grow things, but I haven't been very successful. Or, you know, I live in a condominium and I don't know how I can have vegetables. I want fresh vegetables, but how can I possibly grow them in limited space? So today with me, we've got Ed Scavarch, our commercial horticulture agent at the University of Florida's Extension Office, and Jim McGill, a master gardener in St. Lucie County. So welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you, Anita.
Thanks for coming and helping us figure all this out. Because
Absolutely.
I know people are really interested in growing vegetables, and some of them have like tried and they failed, and they tried and they failed, and then they get really frustrated, like many things that we have in Florida, because there's so many different things. So I know you guys are here today and you're talking about some other things, and Ed, you grow some things, your family grow things hydroponically, so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we grow hydroponically in a combination of vermiculite and perlite in one of our towers, and then
And that's
in
in
another
place of soil, right?
That's in place of soil,
Okay.
yes. And then we also utilize a perlite, and we'll put coconut coir, which is a byproduct of coconuts, and we set that in the containers, and we grow that way as well. We also use grow boxes with sphagnum moss, flat bags that will expand when you put water into it, and again, the coconut coir. So we have a number of different ways. We even build a bucket that we use to grow vegetables in. But the point is that it's all soilless, it's convenient, and the economy of space. You can do it in small areas.
Okay, so if we say you have a person that has a patio, you know, a very small space. They've got a patio, or they live in a condominium. They might be lucky enough to have a patio outside of their condominium out the door. So what would you suggest for them? Would you suggest the bags? Do you have other alternatives that you would suggest for them?
Yeah, sure. The grow box that I had talked about, that would work very good. Again, it's small. It's probably about 18 inches wide and 3 feet long. The way that it's set up, it's a self-watering type of unit. It works through capillary pull of the whatever you're growing, tomato or lettuce, and you just go and you water it ever so often, maybe once a week. And there's a water retention area down there, so that's a very good unit to use in a small space.
So, all right, help me understand. Now, you said it's a self-watering, but you're putting water in there. So,
well, what I mean by self-watering is that, yeah, you're going to put the water into it. There's a small tube that you put water into. You can put your hose in there, and you'll fill up the
that place in the bottom that you're talking about. Okay.
And then
so it's like a one time for a period of time.
Right, and then the root system pulls that water up, and that's what waters the buckets. You don't have to go out there and water it every couple days or every day.
Or twice a day.
Yeah, or pick the weeds off of it or anything like that.
Oh, that's always nice.
Yeah, so that's a good unit. And then we also have been experimenting with a recirculating unit where the water tank is at the bottom of the unit, and you have a pump in there and a timer, and it's that timer turns the water on 3 times a day, and it automatically waters the vegetables, and then the water seeps down into the storage tank, and it keeps on recirculating through.
So is this one vertical?
That is a vertical tower,
okay,
yes.
and then you have like levels in that vertical tower?
Yeah, you have 5 levels to it, and at each level there will be a space in there for you to put a plant in. So you could grow tomatoes in it, you could grow peppers in it, lettuce, herbs. So it's small. I mean, it's like putting a patio container out there. It's maybe 2.5 feet wide by 2.5 feet wide by 4.5 feet tall. All automated, and once again, very easy to operate.
Well, Jim, do you not, you work with one of those same, I think the same tower, right, when you're down at the Morningside Library where we have a Master Gardener office?
Right, we have one at the Morningside Library, and Ed helped us set it up and get it all running, and it has been very productive, and whatever I put in there, it grows.
Is it your green thumb, you think, or?
Well, partially just green thumb and just green luck.
Green luck. Oh, that's a good one. I didn't know that.
It's
Is that Shore and Vigori kind of Irish thing, huh?
right. Yeah. the kale is magnificent. I know that's a big thing in everybody's life now is
Oh, yeah.
kale chips, kale this. And we have some that are 16 to 18 inches around now. And they're really, really producing well.
So these vertical ones possibly give you that ability that you don't have to bend over quite so far, or most things
Right.
are up a little higher than what they would be just on the ground. Now,
Right.
is there other advantages to using hydroponics?
Well, I just feel that, you don't have to go out there and weed. And in Florida,
That's a big thing, isn't
That's
it?
our big problem
Yeah.
is weeding. I know if I leave my gardens for a week, I'm in trouble. I'm behind. So you don't have to be there every day to take care of it, and you don't have to be there every day to water. You can have time frames where
You can actually
be
have a
week.
vacation or something?
You can go on vacation.
Wow.
You can go on vacation,
And it'll be okay.
it grows.
Well, tell me, if you're using water, because I know with soil, there's nutrients in the soil that the plants use, and of course we sometimes have to add fertilizer. So what do you do for hydroponics?
Well, as Ed would tell you, we have certain types of chemicals that we put in there that is designed to promote the growth. There's calcium is one of them.
Oh,
And-
yeah, calcium's important, isn't
Yeah,
it?
and those nutrients are mined from natural sources,
Right.
Anita, Jim, and they're not synthetically made. So, and the makeup of those two fertilizers is what we put in. We break that down into a solution, and then we measure out a percentage of that per gallon of water.
That you add to your initially? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so you mentioned that they're made from minerals. So if someone was to put in a system, I know a lot of people are really into things that are organic in nature when they grow things. So you're not adding anything to this system except for natural minerals. So would this system be considered organic?
Well, it would be considered organic in a sense that there isn't a synthetic fertilizer put into it.
Okay.
The perlite and the sphagnum is actually classified as an OMRI approved method of growing vegetables.
And what is OMRI?
Well, it's the Organic Materials Registration
Institute.
Institute.
Yeah, there's always
and what they do is they
One of those
classify.
things.
Yeah.
They classify if the product that you're using is a certified organic material.
Okay.
Now, we also are working on utilizing certified Omni-approved organic materials for this unit as well.
Okay.
But in the true sense of is it a certified organic unit? No.
Okay. But and of course, a lot of it to be organic is really, yes, you're right. Certification is one thing, but you also have what you do to the plants. Like you were saying, you don't have to weed, but pests. Are you treating for pests with these hydroponic systems, or?
Well, I still find that there are some pests. Whiteflies seem to show up no matter where you're at. That's the only major one I've had with them.
Yeah, I've had a few aphids, but I tell you what, I've knocked them out again with maybe some soapy water or
Yeah.
some neem oil. Again, all of those are approved organic growing methods.
Okay.
Actually, the neem oil that I use is an Omni approved. And the other benefit is that there's really no disease or nematodes in your soil, which if you grow tomatoes and you don't rotate your garden around from year to year to year, right, Jim?
Correct.
You get those nematodes in there and it'll just eat at the roots. So,
Make your tomatoes less fruitful.
well, yeah.
Less
Yeah.
productive.
Less productive, yeah.
And not as big, sometimes out of character, not round.
Yeah.
It does a lot to the roots and their intake of nutrients.
Now, do plants in hydroponic systems grow faster? Have you ever compared the two?
Well, they grow fast, yes. You start a seedling, and from seedling to harvest, I would think that you're looking at 45 days. So
Depending on the type of vegetable, I guess.
depending on the type of, let's say lettuce.
Lettuce.
But they grow rapidly, and you harvest them either as whole or as a leaf lettuce.
Now, when you harvest, do you take the whole plant out? Or
Well, you
do you
can.
harvest parts of it, like you would in a garden? Do you?
Well, you can. You could take the whole plant out and then go back and replant with it, or you can harvest around the edges of it, around the outside of those leaves, and use those. So really, either way, it depends on what you're growing. If you're growing some sort of like a mini head, like a mini romaine or something like that, you go in and take the entire
that
head
sounds really
out.
good.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of a lot of these units, is that with it being a smaller space, is that you can get into the many types of lettuces, like romaine, which is reputed to have great nutritional value to it, and they don't get real large. So, and they grow. I mean, you can get ahead in 45 or 50 days if you know anything about romaine. It takes a while to get a full head of romaine.
Yeah, we had a lot of success with the lettuce
And you mentioned kale.
and the kale, and we picked from the bottom on a lot of the lettuce types we had, and probably for a month I gave lettuce to everybody, and it was still growing till we took the last head of it and cut it off and replanted. But lettuce does really well if you want to eat a lot of fresh lettuce. That's
That's
the
one
way
of the
to
ones
go.
that does really well in there.
Yeah.
And I know
Lettuce,
you mentioned
kale.
tomatoes. What are other plants that could go in there? Other vegetables, or you mentioned herbs even.
Well, I've put a lot of the standard herbs, the basil, the dill, the parsley, all those type of things that if you want them to have them available for your dinners or whatever, they grow very well, and they stay there for a long time because they're one of the things that you can trim
And use a little
still
bit of
use.
at a time as you need it.
Right,
Yeah, that's
and
a
it'll
really
keep
good
coming
idea.
back, so it does well.
Now, do you need to have things that are the same? I know when you're planting a garden, you want to keep, like, the song Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme.
Right.
The three of them, the sage, rosemary, and thyme, like less water than the parsley. So is the same situation true for a hydroponic system? Should you kind of put things that have like watering needs in that system so you can adjust the amount of water it gets?
Well, on the
or-
rosemary and those sorts of herbs that need less amount of water, or you can really, kill with kindness, they're a little bit tougher because that substrate, or the perlite and vermiculite combination, is consistently moist.
Oh, okay. So, it doesn't really ever dry out.
No, it
Okay.
doesn't. No, it doesn't. And so, and that's a good point. You really need to understand the environment that you're planting your lettuce or your tomatoes or your
herbs.
parsley, sage, rosemary,
Rosemary
and
and
thyme. Right?
Yeah, I've noticed that on some of those that they grow very well for, maybe a month, 2 months after they're ready to produce, and then they seem to get to a point in their age that they cannot take the water, and then they just die off.
And there's
and that
other
happens.
There's others like a Mizuna, which I use, and arugula. Well, they grow so fast in these units that the root system literally can plug it up.
Wow.
So there are others that you don't want to grow simply because it becomes so
Because
prolific.
they're so prolific.
Yeah. So
And then do you guys grow flowers in them too? I mean, flowers, some parts are edible.
Well, I have portulaca in a couple of things that I have at home, and they're gorgeous this time of year because they like
love the sun,
They
yeah.
like all the moisture.
Yeah.
And I have them on my back porch, and it's just a flow of flowers growing.
Do you eat your portulaca?
I don't. I've been trying to get my wife to, but it hasn't happened yet. But,
Well, I've heard it's high in omega-3s.
but someone had told me that, probably you.
Probably me. Yeah.
And I tried it. It does very well. I've also planted zinnias, other flowers in there just for if somebody wanted a flower pot, big one, you can do it this way too.
Well, that brings up a good
Hydroponics.
point because you talked about the vertical element, but you also mentioned something about a bucket and other things. So what other things can you use to do hydroponics?
Well, I think that you're almost limited by your lack of creativity as long as you have, perlite or vermiculite or even a floating garden where you just
Well, that
float
sounds
it,
cool. I've
you
seen
float
those
it in
at
water.
Epcot.
Yeah, you float it in
Similar?
water as long as you're getting your nutrient ratios correct.
Okay.
Like your nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium. You can get a baby pool, a little baby pool this
About the
size
size
right
of our
here.
table here.
Yeah, and you can float styrofoam in it, and then put these little net pots in it, and you can grow that way. Inside of
How thick is the styrofoam?
about 2.5 inches.
Oh, so it's pretty thick.
Yeah, it's pretty thick, and
And then you mentioned, what's a neti pot?
a net pot would be
Or
a
net
plastic pot that you would put your seedling in, and the net pot will come right to the below the piece of styrofoam, so it's just barely touching the water.
Okay.
Then you go in there with a keyhole saw, and you just keyhole it, then you set your net pot in it. Again, at
And then
our
it's got vermiculite and all in there as well?
no, you can just go ahead and put your seedling right in that.
Okay, and the
So you're
seedling
growing
is...
the seedling in. You could grow it in soil, in a seedling tray, and then the other one is with the little styrofoam type of media that you can grow it in as well.
Okay, all right.
So,
And I guess you could do that. It doesn't have to be a kid's pool. It could be any kind of
well, you can do
vessel.
it with a 5-gallon bucket if that's what you'd like to do. I've done it with that by just taking a piece of styrofoam and putting it in a net pot and letting it float like that. Or you could take a 5-gallon bucket and make almost the same system as we had talked about with the earth box, where you have a water reserve and
down in the bottom
down in the
of
bottom.
the bucket.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have that information at
That's the Berkey bucket.
That's the Berkey bucket.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And we have that information at our website. Master gardeners do.
Okay. So people could build a Berkey bucket. They could take an old swimming pool or any other, like you say,
Mm-hmm.
creative idea they have to put some styrofoam on top and then put the plant materials down below.
Which is really a great way to start, because you see something that's working and you don't have all that much money
Investment.
into it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So, and then
Kind of sparks your interest or your taste, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next year you're gonna get a little bit more, and then all of a sudden a hobby is gonna run amok, and you got a backyard full of
And then you
Of
grow so
vertical
much and you're so
towers.
excited and your neighbors are
Yeah.
really happy that you're sharing everything.
Well, they are, because they'll barter away wine for lettuce.
Ooh,
and
that sounds like a really
there.
nice one.
See?
Yeah. You never know what you can barter for nowadays, right? Wine is
for
one
sure.
of them.
wine's good for you, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Just as good as the portulaca, I guess. A little bit, anyways.
Yeah.
It goes along, especially if it's red, I believe, the antioxidants in it.
Right.
So, what about fruits? Can we grow fruits in there? I mean, we know tomatoes are really considered a fruit because it's got an ovary.
Mm-hmm.
But what about other fruits? Are other fruits you can grow in there? Have you tried any of those yet? Strawberries or?
No, I haven't tried any of those. You can, though. There has been other outfits that have grown strawberries very successfully in these
hydroponic
units, in
systems?
hydroponic situations. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, it can be done.
Okay. So is there anything you probably would want to hold off on? Corn?
Yeah, corn. I
might
would-
not be a good one.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Unless it was little miniature corn.
Yeah, a little maize.
Yeah.
I don't know, broccoli, cauliflower. I don't know if I want to grow in that particular
Well, any
environment.
root crop you wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to
Right,
grow, but
right.
Carrots.
stuff like that. I mean, peppers you can grow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's, you can attempt other things. I mean, I've attempted pumpkins and green beans, and they do grow, but they're hard to manage in the
Because of
pot.
the smaller space and those little corners that you're talking about.
Right, because
Yeah.
the vines will take off. If you had
Right.
some place to
If you had support for them or something.
support,
Yeah.
you could get away with growing something like that.
Okay.
But
So some things that works really well for, and other things maybe the other systems might work good. So
Yeah, I've grown beans in those earth boxes.
that's what I was going to
really
suggest.
good.
Maybe that would be.
And eggplant in the flat bags and in the Berkey bucket. So, yeah, carrots
Because things,
and
I mean, I've even
beets.
seen tomatoes get quite large sometimes. I guess it depends on the type of tomato, right? There's
Yes.
a couple different kinds of tomato, indeterminate and determinate. What's the difference there?
Well, with a determinate tomato, once it flowers, it stops growing vegetatively, and you've got literally just one crop out of it. And then with your indeterminate, it'll flower and you'd harvest, but the vegetative growth keeps going and it keeps flowering and
That
keeps
means it's
going.
indeterminate. It's going to go on forever
just
and ever
goes on.
until
Oh, yeah,
something
absolutely.
takes it out.
Yeah, and some of these larger greenhouses, they have tomatoes where, you know, you look at the stalks and they lay them down and the stalks go on forever, and then, you know, they pop them up and grow off of that. So yeah, they just keep growing and growing and growing as long as it's in the right environment.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's no pesties
Well,
or weeds.
I've had tomatoes in one of Ed's standing hydroponics, and it grew well. We had lots of tomatoes. A lot of people ate them, said they were very sweet. They got to where they were too long, so I just cut them almost back to the ground and left them in there because I didn't want to pull out the roots. They resprouted, and now I got a second crop out of the same
Wow.
same thing without replanting it.
Yeah.
So
Very
you know
cool.
you can
For
do
some
it
vegetables, probably.
with some vegetables. And one of the things I found with the calcium, when you put the calcium in there to keep the rot away, that helps keep
Oh yeah,
the rot.
blossom end rot. Yeah, right on the
And
bottom of your tomato.
I've
right?
did it with and without the calcium, and definitely without the calcium.
Not a
you
good
get-
thing,
You
huh?
got the end rot.
Yeah.
You know.
And the other thing is that that calcium is constantly being moved to the plant via the water. So, you know, just because you have that calcium in there, if it isn't being watered correctly and getting moved to the plant, well, you'll still have that blossom end rot problem.
So the fact that the roots aren't totally in water all the time, they're in this medium you're talking about, the vermiculite and the perlite.
Right.
So they're not sitting in water all the time, like rotting. So they're just getting the moisture and taking it from the little roots that might touch the water or the nutrients that you've got, and then they pull it up through that like they would out of soil. Is that correct?
Well, with the recirculating, the roots are going to always sit in that perlite vermiculite combination,
Right.
and the nutrients will be pumped up from the water reserve through a piece of PVC to a drip.
Oh, and then it goes
And
down,
then
then
down
it
it
goes
goes.
down, then comes
Right.
back up again.
With
Got it.
with the Berkey buckets and with the other ones, the grow boxes, those roots can get down, and they get down in those holes and can get right on down to the water because they'll seek water, they'll seek moisture.
I see.
So yeah, they can get long. But what happens when they hit that water? That's it. They'll root prune right there, so they're not going to get any deeper. But still, between those, the depth of both of those grow boxes, that's deep enough to support the plant.
Yeah, I found with tomatoes that you cannot plant them in the top couple of levels of the thing because first the weight, it will pull it over, and second that those roots continue to grow till it touches that water somewhere. And I found that, like you said, one of them got really clogged because
Roots got too big.
it got just too many roots in the top and could grow. I found that when I put them at the bottom and let them cascade over the container that holds the water, that they seem to grow better where they can go in, get into that, just touch the water, and then they grow the best.
Yeah, and we look for varieties like that, Anita. I look for varieties that are maybe a dwarf or a smaller tomato that where the bush might only get 2 feet tall.
So they don't get
So, yeah,
gigantic.
Because I've gone in with others, and that's, as Jim said, that's exactly what happens. The system gets plugged up, and then the water's starting to run out over the other towers. So the size of the tomato plant that you use is also very important. And you set that down at the bottom of it. Now, peppers, you could probably put it up at the top
Yeah,
of it.
peppers could
You could
last.
put it up on the top because, you know, that'll last. Then you put your lettuce in, and then you got a whole salad bowl when you
right.
harvest.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, huh?
Yeah, because
And you put a
I
little
know
herbs in there, and then you got the stuff for the dressing.
Yeah,
There you
so-
go.
with the
Wow.
tomatoes, I mean, I've experimented on different angles of it, and when I put it in, and it grew really well in the top, and it grew, I would say I had 5 feet of vines and maybe 50 tomatoes on it. but it was just so much to manage that it just didn't work out for me. And I had the big boys, better boys, which were a medium-sized tomato. And I got a good production out of them, but it was a challenge. And I wouldn't probably do it. I'll probably go back to like a thumb or a bigger thumb, something
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
I think that's what you originally suggested to us.
The thumb, is that like a type of tomato? Is that what we're saying? Or,
Yeah.
or is it the size
Yeah.
of the tomato?
Well, it's about the size of the tomato. So, they're a little bit, actually a lot smaller. And actually, people, I think, enjoy those sorts of tomatoes in their salad as opposed to a slicer. Now, on a slicing tomato, larger one, they might use it for tomato sandwiches, which
Yeah.
are absolutely awesome.
They are
Right?
awesome. Absolutely. Yeah.
And-
By themselves or with other things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and did you have one tomato plant in the bottom, or did you put two tomato plants on the bottom of the recirculating, the bottom container?
I originally had two, and one, I don't know what happened to it. It just didn't seem to work. And then the second variety, it's like I say, I've trimmed it back, and it still grows, and it's doing fine still to this day.
Now, with the Berkey bucket and the grow boxes, you could put a better boy in there or a larger size tomato.
Sized tomato.
Yeah, as long as you stake it up properly and all of that. So you can grow the larger sized tomatoes in those if you wanted to. Yeah.
That's good.
I found with the Berkey bucket that you can also, in a lot of the stores, they have the regular tomato cage.
Oh, and you put it right into the
You
bucket?
put it right on,
What you
right
put
over
the
it.
tomato cage upside down.
Yeah,
Oh.
And
yeah.
it fits right on the bucket, and then you just,
Just let it to grow
bend
up.
the tops out,
Okay.
and it does the same as if you were having it in the garden.
Yeah, I think I took mine and I put it around the bucket. Then I just took a strap or a
Right.
bungee cord and wrapped it around that way.
Right.
But just turn it over.
Just turn it up, and then it
There
does
you
the
go.
You guys
same
are very
thing.
clever, all the little ideas you guys have. Well, if you guys would like more information about alternative ideas to gardening, the normal way that we think of with the dirt and the soil and all those weeds this time of year, if you want some alternatives that work better for you or for your situation, visit the University of Florida's IFAS Extension website or come by and see us. We're at 8400 Pecos Road, and we're also at the Morningside Library. So come out and join us, and stay tuned for the next adventure with Extension.